I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about empathy today. I've been quite interested in the, I guess what you would call a conservationist, animal activist, Jane Goodall, who sadly passed away recently in her 90s. Just kind of made me think a little bit about empathy and how the world lacks real empathy. And it kind of got me thinking about the way in which we do things in the Western world, the way in which we operate overall. I was just a few minutes ago thinking about the workplace and, how many of us go to work in a shitty mood on a Monday morning? How many of us have been in a position where we feel like we don't have any outlet to express what's really going on, how we're really feeling that day, what's really going on with us. We live in this state of existence where we're told to suppress things that we're feeling, things that we're going through all the time. Well, maybe not told, but we feel this kind of invisible kind of force, this sort of, I don't know what you would call this kind of like force field of, these sort of very, very unhealthy ways of coping, let's say. And, in the world of work, or the world of employment, I really do think that it would be massively beneficial for everyone just to be able to be allowed to air their grievances. Whether it's just like 1 hour per day in the morning before you start work, whenever, however it would work. I think it would be so useful for everyone to have an ability to really get things off their chests, to really just open up and be allowed to be honest in a safe space where, but with empathy, Because I think that's the thing we lack in the Western world. We lack empathy. We lack the ability to care about others. We lack the ability to have compassion, I think. And that's because we're so used to this individualistic way of living, this, the world is mine kind of attitude. That we don't stop and really think about other people's problems, other people's emotional states and whatever they're going through in their personal lives. And while, at the end of the day, it's got nothing to do with us, really, I do think, in some small way, I think it does matter because, we're all walking around with our own traumas and our own baggage. And we don't realise how much of an impact it's having on ourselves and other people. This is why so many people end up in arguments, end up in being, confrontational. And this is why there's so many toxic behaviours and toxic habits in the Western world. Not just in the West, but I would say there's more of it in the Western world, more of certain toxic behaviours in the Western world probably than other parts of the world. And it's because of a lack of empathy. It's because people don't know how to talk to each other. People don't know how to be human with each other. People, for the most part, they keep things very surface level, very shallow. And the reason for that is because people can't deal with other people's emotions. People can't deal with other people's drama and trauma. So people keep conversations to a surface level to protect themselves. And I just think that we need more empathy in the West. Because I think we're losing it. I think we're sadly gradually losing our ability to care. I just see it all the time. It's just I don't know, just everywhere I look these days, it's just people just seem to be at each other's throats all the time. And I'm no different. I do it the same. I'm guilty for it as well. But it's because we don't have an outlet to be honest with each other. We don't like being honest with each other, do we? We like to laugh. We like to deflect. We like to, find some kind of way of not trying to avoid serious stuff, especially in England. We're well known for it. That's why probably partly why we have such a range of humour, because we're just no good at being honest with each other. We're no good at opening up, and that's why there's such a prevalence of drinking. That's why there's such a prevalence of drug use. That's why nightlife is what it is, because people don't have any other outlets to be allowed to be themselves. That's why so much shit turns so toxic all the time. How many times you've had a conversation with someone and someone says something uncomfortable and it turns into an argument. Or at work, you have a disagreement with someone at work, or your boss or whatever, or your partner or a family member, and it turns into an argument and you didn't mean it to, and it's because so much stuff is bubbling underneath the surface all the time. There's so many unspoken things between people, and let's not kid ourselves as well that there's always secrets between people as well. And that's the way we live our lives. We think that that's normal. We think that it's okay to just be, because we live our lives in a way that we want other people to like us. We want to feel validated. We want to feel like we fit in, and that other people, we're just always constantly in this headspace of maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't think I should do that. I don't think I should talk about this subject. I don't think I should share that emotion or be too dramatic or whatever. And so we're constantly in this space of what ifs and buts all the time. What if they judge me? What if they criticize me? So we never really relax, do we? And we don't relax because we're fearful of people picking up on weaknesses of our vulnerabilities and using them against us. And again, I come back to the same thing I made earlier: empathy. It's a lack of empathy. And why do we have a lack of empathy? Well, it's because we have a society now where we have overindulgence in everything. As long as you've got enough money, or you've got, if you've got access to the internet, you've got an overindulgence of instant gratification. If you've got enough money, you've got an overindulgence of food. You can go and buy whatever you want now. There's a zillion different shopping sites and whatever, and sprawling, mega fucking shopping centres, and again, I just think all of this. I don't think any of this shit is really helping, if I'm honest. Where's the empathy in our lives these days? Where's the humanity in the way that we live now? I can't see it anymore. I don't know what we are anymore as a species, personally. Maybe, my only hope, perhaps, maybe it's wishful thinking, but, maybe in some way, maybe AI might be a good thing. Maybe technology might play a part in that. I don't know. But I think the more that we isolate, the more that we the more that we move away from each other, the more that the more that we keep everything surface level because of our societal, cultural expectations, the less empathetic we're going to be. Think about this when you're in public sometimes and you see something happen. Somebody falls over or there's an accident and people are there on their phones now. It's like, that didn't used to happen years ago. Like, people used to go over and help. Or something happens on the bus or something, and it just becomes, people just laugh. People just, there's just no, to me, I don't see much sense of like care in people these days. I don't know why that happened. I don't know exactly when that happened, but and as well, like, anytime anybody tries to do anything good now, you get treated as suspicion. You get treated with suspicion. Why? If you're trying to do something to help somebody, like, I remember years ago, I remember there was one when I was still living in East Hull. There was an old woman I once helped with some shopping bags because they were quite heavy, and I remember some people like looking at me like it was like with some, oh, why are you doing that? What are you doing that for? Because I'm trying to help her, and I didn't even want any money. I just did it because I wanted to. There was another time when I came out of the church, when I used to go to church with my uncle back in the day. There was a woman that was on, like, I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but she was like just asking for money. And I just gave it. I just gave it because I had some money with me at that time. And my uncle was like, "Oh, why did you do that?" I said, "Because I wanted to." See, do you see how people are so judgmental? Do you see how people are so quick to judge and criticize whatever you do? No matter what you do in this, especially in England, where people are hyper-judgmental, hyper-critical of you all the time. It doesn't matter what you do. People are always going to judge you, always going to think that you're up to something, that you've got some agenda going on, that you've got some ulterior motives. It's like I didn't have any agenda at all. I wanted to help someone. I've done loads of things for people over the years and I didn't get anything in return for it because I didn't want anything in return for it. I did it because I felt at the time that was the right thing to do. Of course, yeah, I've done other things in other times of my life where I wanted something in return for it and there was something to gain from it. I'm not going to sit and lie, but a lot of the time I've done things for nothing in return at all. The amount of times that I've helped teach, my wife's her students various things, and I didn't get paid for it. I did it because I wanted to help, because I wanted to make my wife happy. I didn't do it for money. If anything, I just did it to, at the very least, thank you. I just think that we're losing ourselves. We're losing the good things about what it is to be a human being. There are certainly a lot of things that aren't great, but there are things that we should practice. There are things that we should cling on to. There are things that we should make a daily habit. We should practice mindfulness. We should practice some degree of spirituality, whatever that might mean for you, whether that's meditation or sitting in the quiet, sitting somewhere where you can reflect, listening to some calm music, whatever it is, there should be some way in which we all have an ability to practice self-care, practice empathy. And certainly in the world of employment, that's so important. Because I think it could help us to be better, much better employees. It would make us more understanding of each other. It would make us more resilient, I think, because we would understand each other better. You know, we would understand just, you know, because we all see when we go to work, we don't see an accurate portrayal of that person, of the people around us, and they don't see who we truly are either. Even with sometimes even with our closest friends, you know, we put on this suit of, I'm ready to play the game of civility, of banter, of small talk, of, you know, corporatism, of tolerating each other. And while I don't think that, you know, I'm not suggesting for 1 second that we should live in a world where we don't tolerate each other. You know, I'm calling for the exact opposite. I think that we should live in a world that's more, I just think, more honest, but more empathic as well. I think both can work together alongside each other. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to respect. It comes down to realizing that the world doesn't revolve around you, and the world doesn't revolve around anybody else either. The world is everyone's. It's that, you know, we all have to try and get by in this world the best that we can. I think that empathy is massively important because of that. You know, life is difficult. Things are happening all the time to people that we know, to ourselves. There's endless stress and pressure every day of one, you know, from one source or another, and you can't avoid it. But that's life. And I think, you know, if we can somehow just have a bit more empathy for each other, and just try and be a bit kinder and less competitive all the time, and less passive aggressive all the time, and less, you know, one-upmanship, all that kind of stuff, the constant needs to put, you know, this sort of endless way of just this endless thing of like people trying to put each other down and belittle each other and, you know, mock and humiliate or embarrass or shame other people or put people into places, stereotype, stigmatize people, demonize people, stick labels on them. We don't need to be like that. You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again, that there's so much potential for our species. There really is. There's so much potential for good. There's so much potential for joy in this world, I would even say. You know, there's so much potential for people to be better, to be kinder to one another, to be nicer to one another. And that doesn't mean that we're always going to like each other. It doesn't mean that we're always going to want to be around each other. And that's okay, that's fine. Everyone has their limits, you know, and you know, we're all different. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to admit that. You know, even your closest friends, your closest family members, sometimes, you know, you reach a tolerance limit with them. You know, you reach a point where you just say, I need to take a break from you. And I need to have a rest. I need to spend some time by myself. Not because I hate you, not even necessarily because I dislike you, but just because I'm a human being and sometimes I just need to have time to myself. And I think work in the way that work works, I don't think it helps, because I don't think it's natural for people to be around each other for 8 to 12 hours a day, every day, or, you know, 5 to 6 days a week. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's good for people's mental health or their physical health either. I think we need radical new ways of doing things. And maybe over the coming decade, we will start to see things change. I hope in a better way. Perhaps, with more compassion, more empathy. And, maybe through the use of artificial intelligence and automation, biotech, that maybe in some way, some strange way, that maybe that will happen. We also need to have empathy for our planet. We need to have empathy for the things that live around us, and think about other people as well, other parts of the world as well, and their environments and their resources, their natural environments, not just our own. And what bothers me sometimes is that I see that there's so much greed, so much selfishness in this world. And sometimes it's easy to get defeatist. It's very easy to get bogged down in negativity and to kind of think to yourself, there's no hope. But there is always hope. In fact, hope is the only thing that you do have. I would say without hope, without empathy, without respect, without tolerance, we have nothing as a species. We are nothing without those things. Because everything else is kind of based around and trust as well. And I think people would be more trusting of each other. I think if people were more open, were more honest about themselves. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to reveal every single nook and cranny of your personal life. But I do think that, in terms of employment, there should be an outlet in which everybody, every day, every morning, for an hour or so, has the opportunity to have a little piece of time to express themselves openly about and honestly about what they're feeling and why they're feeling the way they are that day. Because if you can get it out of the way early, you can get on with your day. Because what tends to happen is that people come to work carrying stresses and pressures with them from their weekend or just in general, whatever's going on. And people don't just switch off when they come to work, even though people like to pretend that they do. People bring it with them to the work. It's just that most people don't talk about it, but it's just in the back of people's minds. People have got bills, that they're stressing about. They've got kids they've got to think about. They've got, maybe a partner that's sick. Maybe their parents are getting old. Maybe, they've had an accident the day before. Maybe somebody's passed away. And yeah, it's like, yes, we're all adults and we're all supposed to take some degree of responsibility for what we're, to dealing with what we're going through. But I do think, in terms of our relationship with work, we need to, I genuinely believe that we need to have some real, genuine way to express ourselves, whether that's with other people, everybody else, in some kind of like communal kind of a, I don't know, some kind of like a meeting type situation, or whether it would be, a one-on-one type thing. At the end of the day, without enough empathy, the world, the world will never get better unless we move towards a more empathy-based society, more empathy-based culture, in my opinion, in terms of more empathy towards each other, and especially between men, because of the urge of men to be competitive around other men for resources, access to women. I think it's vital that men practice empathy in healthy ways. It's all good and well for men to bond over gaming or sports or competitive ways. It tends to be that men tend to bond over competitiveness, and I'm not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing, but I think sometimes it becomes toxic, and I think that women have their own versions of those things as well, their own kind of, let's say, unhealthy ways of competing with other women and for men's attention, and between men for women's attention. I get it, there are only so many resources, and competition is to some extent, I suppose, I don't necessarily say a good thing, but I think it's just a natural part of human nature and nature itself, really. For the most part, there's no getting away from it. I don't think anytime soon, but I think there are ways in which things can be done in much healthier, much better ways. The way that we live our lives, this never-ending rat race and never-ending state of buying things all the time, getting up at the crack of dawn 5 or 6 days a week to go and do something you don't really like, or to do something that's extremely stressful for not enough money. I don't think that's healthy, personally. I really don't think that's very... I don't think that creates healthy people, in my opinion. I think it creates people that have money. It creates people that contribute to their economy. But I don't think it creates healthy individuals. The only time though where I can feel like I can really mostly be myself, if I'm being honest with you, is when I'm talking to my family, I suppose, in some ways, when I'm with my wife, or when I'm spending time with my dogs. That's about it, really. Every other situation, I always feel like I'm under some spotlight to perform, some spotlight to entertain in some way, some spotlight to meet others' expectations, to validate others, to meet other people's needs all the time, to try and understand and accommodate everybody else. And I think that applies to employment as well. And again, I think it's because people lack the ability to be empathetic towards other people. People just either find it too difficult, or they find it embarrassing, or they see empathy as a form of weakness. And that's what I think the problem is that people don't view empathy in a healthy light. They view it as a sign of weakness, because in a capitalist society, to be seen as empathic is to kind of be seen as, the weak one of the pack kind of thing. And I just think that's an incredibly toxic way to think about it. I don't think that empathy is a weak thing at all. I think it's an incredible strength. I think it's a really underestimated, underappreciated, often massively underrated trait that people need and either lack, or they just don't practice it, or they just don't know how to express it properly. And again, this is why we have the toxic dynamics that we have among ourselves, in our social circles. There's always going to be something that happens at some point, or something that somebody says, that's going to reveal the cracks in that social dynamic. Always. I've seen it happen multiple times. I've been inside of that kind of situation many times before, and you soon see just how quickly things escalate. You see just how fast and how shallow those conversations, are, and how they deteriorate into people becoming argumentative, and if you're not careful, becoming, violent, or at least the conversation turning extremely ugly, and profanity never being too far away, and petty remarks and insults, and everything kind of comes out the closet, doesn't it? Everything comes out the woodwork, and then you suddenly see everything laid bare, and then you truly see the truth of that dynamic, that social dynamic, that the truth, the real ugly, dark truth, what's going on between certain people. Because people often, they live their lives in a way that they try to avoid all that stuff. And I don't think we should. I think we should have it all out in the open. I think everything should be out in the open. From the moment you meet someone, whether it's a friend, a partner, whoever, you should be direct, you should be honest, and you should be transparent with that person, because you can save yourself a lot of problems. And again, this is where empathy plays a role in it. If people can understand you and you can understand them, then you can save yourself so much drama, so many petty arguments, so many ugly moments between people, and we need humanism. We need to find more in common with each other than the things that divide us. That's what we need to do, and we don't do that. We're always looking for differences. We're always looking for things that we can say we're better than somebody else. We're always, it's always got to be comparison all the time. And men are especially known for this. It's always a status thing. It's always I've got this, you haven't got this. I'm better than you because of this. I'm faster, I'm smarter, I'm stronger, I'm better in some ways. It's always got to be this, this constant ego game playing thing. It's like, it's always, so why has it always got to be like that? Why has it always got to be toxic? Why has it always got to be, everything's always got to be a competition all the time? This is how I ended up on my own. This is how I ended up being isolated away from people, because I got tired of all that garbage. I just got tired of it. I couldn't stand it anymore. I just couldn't stand it. Because I was the one that was carrying the empathy, and they weren't. Because they always have to, people always want to put you down. They always want to put you into what they think is your place in that dynamic. Know your place. Know your place in the pecking order of this friendship, in this dynamic between us and other people that aren't your friends but are mine, or are kind of, not really your friends. Or between, your partner's friends or their family or whatever it is. It's always this thing of this hierarchical structure of everything all the time. And it's fucking exhausting. As an introvert, I find all that stuff to be really intolerant. I can't stand it. And I don't like having to deal with all that stuff all the time. I really don't. But I always still try to find something good in people. I've always tried to find something that makes me think that person's not as much of an asshole as they probably are, That's how I am. And maybe I expect too much of the world. Maybe I have unrealistic, ideals and wants and needs from other people that maybe will just never happen. I don't know, but if we can't have empathy for ourselves, then as far as I'm concerned, we are doomed as a species, because we will never be able to find peace. We'll never be able to come together and be We will never ever get along as a species. It doesn't matter. We will just never ever be able to unite as a species. It just won't happen. And it may not happen. But I just think that if we had more empathy in the way that we lived our lives day to day, then I think that we would see peace happen. It would happen. We would see wars come to an end. We would see people wouldn't argue as much. People wouldn't fight as much. People wouldn't be at each other's throats all the time. People wouldn't be living in this state of existence where they're trying to protect themselves from other people getting to the truth of who they are, because they would already know the truth. See, that's what it is that people live their lives trying to protect themselves from others preying on their weaknesses, or things that people they don't want other people to know about. It's like, well, if you had empathy and if you were honest, then you wouldn't have to act that way, would you? You wouldn't have to deny who you really are. See, that's what we do in the West. We live our lives denying who we really are all the time. We do it in the things we buy, the things we listen to, the things we watch. It's all there. That's all we do. That's all we do from day to day. We go outside, try and meet other people's expectations, accommodate everybody else's emotions, and then when we come home, we're fucking exhausted. And that's how most people live their lives now. They're exhausted being around other people because we're not living our own lives. We don't live our own lives. We live lives that we think other people will respect us for. We live lives that we want other people to like us for, rather than the lives that we really want to live. You know, how many times have you been around one of your closest friends and you wanted to talk about something that was passionate to you, but you know if you spoke about that, they're going to think you're weird. They're going to think, oh, just shut up, will you? I'm not interested. I don't really care. Now, how many times do we do that? You know, how many times do we tolerate, though, things that other people want to talk about, but yeah, when it comes to what we want to talk about, they're not interested? Why? Why do we do that? I'll tell you why. It's because we want to be seen as a part of the group. We don't want to be shut out of it. Again, lack of empathy. This is the problem. This is the problem in the Western world, especially. It's a global thing, I admit. But especially in the West, we deal with things through passive-aggressive humour, passive-aggressive wit, snarky, snide remarks, what they call banter, shallow kind of cultural, traditional, popular kind of like parts of our culture, whatever it is. But do we really truly get along with each other, though? Do we really truly understand each other? I don't think we do. I think we just collectivise because it's something to do. It's something that gives us some kind of a shallow sense of meaning, a shallow sense of value. That applies to everything, really. But at the end of the day, that's better than nothing, I suppose. But I think you have to ask yourself why we're doing that. Why do we have culture? Well, I think a lot of it's mostly down to, in my opinion anyway, I think a lot of it's down to a way to distract ourselves, to focus, to refocus, to stay clear as much as possible from the dark realms of the mind, the dark realms of the truths of what it is, of what often in many ways reality is, and that it's complicated. Sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's very messy, and I just think that. But I think a lot of time we bring it upon ourselves. We bring a lot of misery upon ourselves. We inflict a lot of pain upon ourselves because we hide things. We deny things. We pretend that we're something that we're not. We're constantly seeking other people's validation and approval and admiration and respect and loyalty and trust. And so we tend to live our lives based on other people around us. because we think that that's what's going to help us to be seen as normal. You see, the thing is, in the West, we don't like normal. We don't like facing reality. We don't like facing the truth. So we've built societies and cultures that essentially take us as best as they can, as far away as we can from the realities of this world. And the internet is another aspect of it. Social media is. We're not honest with ourselves. We're not honest with other people most of the time. You know, how many lies do we tell a day? How many times do we avoid things or try and laugh things off or try and bat things away because they're too awkward or too cringy or too weird or too raw, too honest, too uncomfortable to accept or to deal with? And so what do we do? What do we do to deal with all that stuff? We distract ourselves. You know, we go to work. We come home, we distract ourselves on our phones, on our iPads or computers. Maybe we, talk to somebody for a few hours, take a shower, take a bath, prepare for the next day, and that's it. That's all we really do as adults. As kids, it's a different world, And if in some ways, maybe sometimes kids actually have a bit more empathy than adults do, which is ironic, isn't it? Because you would think that adults should have a much more developed, emotional maturity than kids do. But sometimes, I don't know. Some kids just seem to have more emotional maturity than adults do, which is sad, isn't it? Really, very sad. And I just think sometimes I just find that we're such a petty little species, and we're so hung up on our place on this planet, on our place in the vastness of space. We think we're so incredibly special and powerful and unique and so excessively wonderful and miraculous and even if those things are partially true, and if those things are partially true, actually, then why do we live the way that we do? Why do we find it so difficult to be honest with each other? And what I mean by that is that why do we find it so hard to open up to our friends, to our families? The very people that we're supposed to be able to open up with. And yet a lot of the time we don't. And so what do? We go seeking approval and validation through other people, through other means. And that's partly why so many people are addicted to the internet, because it's an outlet for them to express themselves and to be a part of themselves that they can't be in their real world, which tells you that something is severely wrong with the way in which the average person lives their life. I personally find the whole. I think we just need a radical renewal of everything. I think we need a massive rethink about everything that we do in the West. And we need to start to have a lot more gratitude, I think, a lot more appreciation, and do away with this culture of overindulgence that we've lived in now for the best part of 20 years or so. Just endless indulgence all the time. That's why people are ungrateful, because they don't live without it. It's there all the time. So it's like the more the longer you live with things, and the more you have, the more ungrateful you become, because you don't appreciate it, because it becomes a way of life, it becomes the norm, and you want the next thing, and that's why I think as time's going on, that's why I think trends are ending quicker, news cycles are moving on faster, Technology is outdated faster than it used to be. At least in my mind, it seems to be anyway. And it's because there's so much out there now. Such an overindulgence in just about anything you can think of. People no longer have any appreciation for anything anymore. For the most part. Most people in the West haven't had any real true... They've had hardships, but nothing compared to some other parts of the world. We've grown used to comfort and convenience over honesty and transparency. We've grown used to comfort and convenience over empathy. We've grown used to comfort and convenience over compassion. We care more about being comfortable and living convenient lives, convenient situations, than we do about other people and their comfort and convenience. That's where we are now. And that's why I think we're lacking in empathy. That's why we don't seem to have as much compassion as we used to have. I just generally these days, I just get the impression that people just don't seem to care that much anymore. People just seem kind of past it. Sometimes you just need to get out there and you need to go and spend some time in nature, or you need to go and spend some time traveling to appreciate and to have it, to develop some empathy, to truly understand what it is to try and be a decent human being in this world. And it's hard. It is hard to be decent sometimes. I accept that. There are times in life where people test you, where people push you, where people manipulate you, people try and use you for things. And I'm not saying that you can always be empathic towards everybody all the time. Of course you can. But when you can, you should be. At least try. Because what do we have without that? Without that intimacy of the goodness of the human heart. The good things, the good parts of being human. What do we have without that? All we have is bits of technology and, fragile infrastructure, fragile societies and culture. That's all we have. We don't have anything else. We have nothing without the human connection. We have nothing without compassion and empathy in this world. Without care for one another. Without understanding, without respect and trust and loyalty. We have nothing. We are nothing as a species without those things. Our societies are nothing without them. If they mean anything at all. We've become too greedy, we've become too selfish, too absorbed in our own little bubbles of just selfishness and being self-absorbed all the time and engrossed in our own egos and our own wants 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we stopped caring because of it. We stopped caring about the world because we want comfort, we want convenience at other people's expense, at the expense of our environment, at the expense of our precious, fragile ecosystems. But once those things are gone, we don't have anything left. We have nothing. We might as well just dig our own grave now. If that's the trajectory of things, if we're just going to be completely careless for the foreseeable future, we might as well just dig ourselves a grave and get ourselves in it. because that's where we're heading anyway. We don't need to be so nasty. We don't need to be so vile to one another all the time. Not everything has to be a source of competition or comparison, endless comparison with other people's lives. 24 hours a day. The amount of envy, the amount of jealousy, the amount of bitterness and spite and vindictiveness and resentment out in there in the world, in the world of everywhere you go, it's just, it's because, and the reason there's so much of those things is because people don't talk about the shit that they're going through. People don't go and see therapists. People don't go and don't talk to their closest loved ones about what they're really going through. Because in the West, we've had this society now for decades where we've built our societies around suppression because of perceived shame and embarrassment and judgments from other people. If we open up and be honest, if we open up and tell the truth, which is really that's what all the manners and politeness and stuff's about. The stiff upper lip bollocks and all that crap. It's all nonsense. It's all toxic. It's all unhealthy. It doesn't work. It doesn't help you. It creates passive aggressive people that secretly have seething resentment towards each other. That is the fucking truth of it. I'm sorry to be honest. I shouldn't have to say that, but it's just, that's the truth of it. And we all play into it. We're all doing it. We all do it every day we go out there, especially when we meet people we don't know or people that we perceive as some kind of a threat to us. So we get insecure. Then, before we know it, something comes to the surface because we don't practice the ability to find common ground, to find the good things in people. We're always looking for this. If we're insecure, we're always looking for something to pin on someone. We're always looking for something to try and put somebody down because we're insecure, because we don't like them, because they're better than us in some ways. And that makes us insecure. That makes us feel inadequate in life. And I say that from personal experience. I've been someone that's been massively insecure, and I've seen people be insecure around me for some reason or other. So I get it, I understand it. And again, and that's the thing is, it's like, sometimes maybe it is about experience, perhaps, but I do think at the same time there is an element in which you see, I think people find it hard work. They find kindness to be too much. They find it too much. They find it difficult. They find it... people don't want to be seen as weak. That's what it comes down to, I think, in the end. People don't like being perceived as being weak, as vulnerable, as unwell, as mentally, as someone that's mentally unstable in some way. And so that's why people do whatever they can to try and bat away any potential moments of weakness. That's what it comes down to. And so people do whatever they can to keep up appearances, to play the game of being witty, of being, of banter, of humour, of superficial, surface level nonsense. Whether it's in the way that things that people talk about, whether it's in the things that people do, that's how it happens. That's how it works. And I just think it's a shame. I think it's a real shame that we resort to these kind of ways of life, and we tolerate them. We don't. Most people don't seem to question it. Most people don't even seem to see it. But people just go along with it. We have the potential for change. We have the potential for betterness, to be more spiritual, to be closer, to be tighter as people. But yet we let so much shit divide us all the time, that keep us separated, keep us, seething with one form of toxic something or other. And the West is essentially, in my opinion, all the time nothing but toxic and dysfunctional accepted behaviours. Really, I'm sorry to say that, but that's the conclusion that I've come to. And unless we head towards a place in which we start to be more caring towards each other, the West is lost. It will never ever improve. And maybe my fear sometimes, honestly, is that we're too late. It's lost. We've lost it. We lost it partly, as much as I hate to say it, is probably with the fall of Christianity, with the rise of secularism, with the rise of liberalism and excessive hedonism and overindulgence, a lack of control, a lack of respect, a lack of trust. That's how we got here. Unless we start to develop empathy, I don't see any hope for the West, personally. I hope I'm wrong, but I just genuinely, I just don't see much hope for it, because people are so individualistic now. It's an individualistic culture now. It didn't always used to be like that, but it is now. And I sometimes do ponder on whether we can genuinely, realistically turn things around. As I said at the start, about Jane Goodall, she was a remarkable woman, and God rest her soul. She was the kind of character that we need to live. She was the kind of person that we should look up to and be inspired by. The likes of her and David Attenborough, those kind of people of the world. Those are real, true individuals, are true people with kind hearts and good intentions. Not perfect, no, because nobody is, but people that genuinely try to be good and decent in this world. And my fear is that as time's going on, we're going to see less and less and less and less of those kinds of characters. Such a shame.